the Williams Tractor Hotline and visit with Arkansas great Joe Kleine, who's kind enough to join us today here on Ruskin and Zach. Joe, how are you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. Appreciate the time today, and we got to start with I know something that when we visited before you were very passionate about, which is your coach Eddie Sutton getting in the Hall of Fame. It's finally going to happen later this year, and it was announced a couple of weeks ago. Just give us your thoughts on that.
Just very relieved and happy. This is a long time coming. I mean, you just thought over and over again that it was going to happen, and then it didn't, and then it just kind of kept going on. And when you talk to people who know basketball, sports writers, radio people, ex-coaches, ex-players, I mean, everybody is just baffled. There was never any good explanation for it, and everybody we talked to talked about how deserving he was to be in there. So it was just really frustrating for all his former players, and especially his family. But thank goodness they did it while he was still with us, and he could comprehend what had happened, and just very, very grateful that it happened.
Joe, we had Scott Hastings on a couple of weeks ago. You obviously very much in Coach Sutton's camp. I talked to Ron Brewer the other day. I mean, you guys are almost all in lockstep with the praise for Eddie Sutton. What is it about him that sort of drew all of you guys? I mean, you guys are across 10 years almost. And what is it about Coach Sutton that kind of draws all you guys together and I mean, stand right behind him saying this guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, he's a good person. Was he perfect? Absolutely not. But who amongst us is? And so, I mean, he was a good person. Number one, he was an excellent coach. He made us be a family. I mean, I think one of the great things about what he accomplished is not only how much most of his ex-players revere him and love him, but how we are like brothers, and we love, guys that, I look at Ron Brewer and Sidney and Marvin Delt and Coach Counts and those kind of guys, that, I think of them as brothers. He created a family atmosphere. And so, I mean, I think that's a really, great quality. And then, he was a tremendous coach, and he won games. He adapted to styles, and he adapted to the faster paced game and the 3-point line and the shot clock. And so, I mean, he wasn't stuck in his ways. And then he did, at 3 schools, he did things at Creighton and Arkansas and Oklahoma State. He did things that hadn't been done ever. And then, when he was at Kentucky, he went to an Elite Eight and almost to the Final Four. So just a lot of accomplishments.
We're visiting with Joe Kleine here today on Ruskin and Zach. The other reason we wanted to talk to you, Joe, is everybody is talking about this new Bulls documentary that premieres Sunday night. And, I mean, I don't know if you're looking forward to it, but I think most of the sports viewing public is very interested to see this. A, it's new content when there aren't any games going on, and B, it's a very deep dive into this last year with Jordan and the Bulls, where you were a part of that.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I was a minuscule part of, a great dynasty, but I mean, I think the thing that I'm really looking forward to is that's kind of my era. I look at that as the golden age of basketball, kind of when Bird and Magic came in, and then through MJ. I think that's when NBA basketball was at its finest, and just all the great players and the style of play and the rough and the tough and the rivalries and the hatred between, the Celtics and the Knicks and the Celtics and the Pistons, or the Celtics and the 76ers, and the Bulls and the Pistons, and the Bulls and the Cavaliers, and you just had all these teams that just couldn't stand each other. The Heat, when Riley got down there, and the Bulls, and it went on, and you just had these intense rivalries, these intense playoff series with these, magnificent players. And I really look forward to, getting to see, some flashbacks of some, games and some things that I remember, and, officials and assistant coaches, I'm sure you'll see, and people interviewed that, you forgot about or hadn't heard from in a while. I'm really looking forward to that.
This documentary centers around the 97-98 season. It's the last year of the Bulls' run, 6 championships in 8 years. And by that time, a lot of animosity had sort of built up, especially with Pippen and Jordan and the general manager at the time, Jerry Krause.
Right.
What do you remember about just sort of the locker room? Because Jordan was in an interview. He's on an ESPN interview where he said it was like a grind. It was a very trying year. What do you remember about that locker room and the players versus management sort of thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, coming from the outside, I had no idea, but there was a definite us versus them. I mean, there was a definite, players, and not so much guys like me, but, Pippen, Jordan, and Phil versus management. And, a lot of it was centered around, the Bulls would not renegotiate contracts. And Michael signed a, 5 or 6 year deal, and that he outperformed that in a year or a year and a half. And then same thing with Scotty. And then, Phil wasn't compensated, and the Bulls had a policy that they would not, restructure or renegotiate contracts. They played contracts out to the end. And so that really, that was the gist of it. I mean, that was the main ingredient. And so, anybody that, I'm sure, they brought me in, I'm sure that, that they were like, just a lot of times new guys would come in, there would be kind of like, oh, look what they're bringing in, but it wasn't so much geared at a player. It was kind of geared at management. Look what they're giving me, look what they're making me do. And, sometimes, you would hear some people say some stuff like that, Mike or Scotty at that, but it wasn't ever really geared at a player like it sounded. It was more a shot at management. It didn't matter who they brought in. They weren't going to like them. They weren't going to agree with anything management did, because it was just, they played hardball with, Michael Jordan. And Michael, as you know, is a guy who holds grudges and is very stubborn. And, it really, I mean, it was odd, because I thought I was going into Shangri-La, and I mean, it wasn't Shangri-La at all.
You played with Bird, you played with Reggie Lewis, consummate professionals. You played with Barkley, and then you walk into this. I mean, you say Bird, you say Barkley, you say Jordan. Those are 3 of the biggest stars the league's ever had. How did those locker rooms, or how different were those locker rooms with Bird to Barkley, and then to walk into this where you've won 5 championships in 7 years? You'll win 6 and 8. I mean, you had to go in eyes wide open and go, oh, my gosh, what did I just get into?
Well, I mean, it kind of surprised you. There was a little bit of a divide between, Pippen and Jordan and the rest of the team. I mean, they practiced and did stuff with us, but, Bird and Barkley and they would hang out more with you. And again, it's different because Michael was such even compared to Bird and, how people reacted to Bird, Michael was it was a rock star. It was it was the Rolling Stones. I mean, it was bizarre how people would line up to watch him walk to the bus, to watch him get off the bus. Just everything he did was just like the Beatles. I mean, it was just, but the Jackson 5, I mean, it was you couldn't believe how people went crazy over him. And so, with Larry and Charles and they were more accessible and more out in the public. But, and they had a lot of people bugging and messing with them. But, a lot of the things that they were able to do, Michael couldn't even think about doing because, he would be, there'd be 100, 200 people. If he walked down the street, it would, the street would shut down, And so, it was more business. It was more, we got to get this done. Whereas, Larry and them, it was business and you're going to work hard and everything. But it was, I personally thought the overall team unity with Charles and Larry and them was much better than with the Bulls. But again, a lot of that was coming from the strife from management.
And then we're talking about Joe Kleine here, of course, on Ruskin and Zach. And then with that Bulls thing, with all that strife and all of the tension, a couple years before you got there, they put Dennis Rodman in the middle of all that. What is that like to be on a team with that guy at the height of his wildness, really?
Yeah, that's like the old saying, you got a blazing fire. Well, let's throw a little gasoline on it. And he was harmless. He didn't have a stripe. He was wild. He showed it, but he was there every day for practice. He was accountable. He handled his business. But he'd go out and he'd come in one day and his hair would be green or pink, and then he was another guy who drew a crowd. He had a following of people who really dug what he did, and so again, you already have Michael and Scotty and the persona of the Bulls, and now you bring this cat in there that he's got his own little clique and his own little following, and here we go. It just made it even more crazy.
We're all very familiar. This is long before social media started. We're all very familiar with the competitive stories of Michael Jordan and the things that you heard. You were there. You saw some of this. Was he as ultra competitive and, like you said before, holds grudges if he lost? That, as those of us on the outside, we never got to see that. Is he that competitive even to this day?
I don't know about to this day, but up to the day I left there, he was. That full year. In practice, when you scrimmage, if you were on his team, it was like game time. There wasn't any goofing off or clowning around. And if guys who played cards with him, it was, he played to win, and it was intense, and it got, they got after it. He was always pushing it and just always trying to push you as a teammate or a player, because, he was driven to win. And, a lot of the things that he did and said and was accused of doing and things, they were done, to keep his teammates on edge and keep them ready to play and keep them focused on the goal at hand, and that was to win a championship.
Where does Phil Jackson fit into all of the strife? You talk about the Scotty, Michael, and Phil Jackson. He doesn't strike me as a real boisterous guy. It was a guy that kind of got his point across in a different manner.
Right. No, he was. Now again, this is. I don't know how it was like, but there was a strife between he and management, but he wasn't one that would bark at the moon like you just said. Or run to the paper or something like that. But he would let it be known in a very calm and focused manner that he was not happy with what was going on, and so, but very professional about it, very quiet about it. But there was a lot of strife there, and and he would back Jordan and Pippen with their wanting to be paid accordingly, especially in the earlier years. Michael, towards the last 2 or 3 years of his deals, he made up for what he was not paid in the future. But I don't know that in the past. But I don't know that Scotty did, and and Phil really backed them from that standpoint, and as he should. And it created a lot of tension. But he wasn't one to really, bring it up to the team or say something to somebody. He just, you knew he was displeased, but it wasn't something that he would bark at the press or the media or anything like that. But it was definitely there.
You mentioned Scottie. Scottie Pippen's. I mean, he's always going to be joined at the hip with Michael Jordan. Where is he in sort of in this 10-part series? I mean, I'm sure we're going to get some background on Scottie and sort of what he did, but we don't hear a lot of. You hear about Jordan, you hear about Phil Jackson. You don't hear a lot about Scottie Pippen away from the court during those years.
Yeah, I mean, Scottie was, pretty kept to himself. I mean, he wasn't one that, had a lot of attention or things like that. He was kind of Robin to Batman. You had to have him. It was very essential. Couldn't do anything without him, but, still wasn't Batman.
Yeah.
And so that, I mean, that's kind of how I always looked at it. I mean, when you look at what went on and what they accomplished, I mean, he's as important a piece as any. It wouldn't have happened without him. Those three guys, Phil and Michael and Scottie, they all were parts that had to be together to make the run that they did, and all of them were essential to making it work. I mean, if Scottie wouldn't have been there, Michael wouldn't have been as successful, and so on and so forth with all three of them. So, but again, he wasn't Michael Jordan, and that's okay with guys who played with him. We all know how good he was and how awesome a player he was, but he's still not Michael.
Yeah,
and that's just the way it is.
Talking with Joe Kleine, Razorback Greats. The Bulls documentary premieres Sunday night on ESPN and on ESPN2. Joe, we appreciate it today. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. I appreciate you.
All right. Joe and all our guests join us here